provided by the Portage County Public Library Foundation. Mr. Quist indicates that retirement hasn't slowed him down one bit. He has been a resident of Stevens Point since 1978, past president of the Stevens Point Toastmasters Club, and active in the SCORE organization. SCORE stands for Service Corps of Retired Executives, which helps facilitate business seminars in cooperation with the SBEC at UW Stevens Point. He is also active as a volunteer with the USAID Farmer to Farmer programs, which will be the focus of his presentation tonight. Volunteering on projects with the Third World and underdeveloped countries in Europe, Africa, and in the former Soviet Union countries of Central Asia. And if you didn't know, USAID stands for the United States Agency for International Development. The USAID projects involve training and teaching in the areas of technology, education, healthcare, and agriculture at the grassroots level in those countries. The USAID is currently active in over 100 countries around the world. He recently returned from the country of Tanzania in southern Africa, his 21st USAID assignment. Tonight he'll share with us the culture shock he experienced in the former Soviet Union following the collapse of communism. The title of his presentation is Culture Shock Beyond Our Borders. Now would you please join me in welcoming Everil Quist.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, first I want you to relax. I'm not going to have you contribute any money to some favorite cause that I might have, like you probably expected. And second, I'm not going to ask you to volunteer to travel to some unheard of country that you really don't want to go to, like I did a while back. And first of all, we have to decide what culture shock is. How many of you traveled outside the United States? You got passports? Everybody, yeah. You pretty well understand that culture shock is that you hadn't expected. You run into a lot of things, you think, wow, things you hadn't thought about. I hadn't thought about that. Well, the first thing that happens, first of all, Virginia is back there, and she'll have some little cards that you can make notes on, or you can go get them from her. And if you have some questions, or looking for a speaker, or have some comments, she'll put them in this elephant bowl that I have. It's an elephant bowl because I got this in Africa. I bought it at a sort of a sale that they were having on a Saturday, and they have some people that are very good artists down there. And this guy that was doing this had carved this out of a stump. And there it is. So that's my elephant bowl. So you might want to pass it around and take a look at it. Well, the first thing you need to do if you're going to travel is to go down to the library like I did and get the Idiot's Guide on Traveling. Now, we all know that what are you going to learn reading something like this? So who's going to get caught reading it anyway? So that took care of that. First thing that happened is I found out that money is different and time is different. And one of the things I learned is that when you travel in another country, the money is got different names to it. First of all, your inches and pounds and gallons are going to become, I have to read you, centimeters, kilos, and liters. I hadn't thought about that, you know. That'll kind of get you. And then if you're going to travel, be sure you take your 110 volt converter, because if you want to charge your laptop or your digital camera, electric toothbrush, might be a good idea. And on top of that, one of the very important things you need to take along is a flashlight, because in the third world countries, the lights aren't on very much. In most of the countries I traveled with in the former Soviet Union, the power was on from 6 to 8 o'clock at night and from 6 to 8 o'clock in the morning. And that was it. And be sure you take along, learn the hard way, a battery-powered alarm clock. Yeah, you're all nodding up and down. Some of you overslept. USAID, USAID. Basically, that's the agency of our government that does humanitarian work along with a lot of other developed countries around the world. We were in the tsunami in the Far East. We supplied an aircraft carrier, and we housed over, I don't know the number exactly, over 1,000 people who basically had lost everything for about 4 or 5 months. We're down in Haiti, doing things in Haiti. And by the way, in Haiti, there are over 1,000 humanitarian organizations working in Haiti right now. And maybe some of you have heard of some of those. And we do a lot of work in healthcare, education, technology, and in agriculture. And agriculture is my thing. And tonight you're going to get an education, a history education on a little bit of where we are. Here we are in the United States, right here. In fact, right there it says Portage County Library. I can see it right there. The first thing that happens, you fly to Frankfurt or Amsterdam or London or de Gaulle Airport in Paris. Then you go the rest of the way. From here, it's a 12-hour flight nonstop to Cape Town. From here, it's an 8-hour flight to Kenya nonstop. And from here, you take a flight to Istanbul over to Kyrgyzstan. So you're a long way from home. And she mentioned I just returned from Tanzania, my 21st assignment. Well, guess what? That's 21 flights to here. Got to get back. And there's 21 flights to here. You got to get back. It's a lot of flight time. So you have a lot of experiences. And the experiences I have aren't only in these foreign countries. When I came back from, I believe it was Tanzania, I landed in Paris, de Gaulle Airport, beautiful airport. And I got my luggage rechecked and everything done right. And then I go up to the ticket counters looking for United Airlines. And I walk up through this big door, and here's the line. I go, oh, man, am I lucky. Well, and I stood there a while, nothing moving much, and lady, very proper English lady, said, sir, where are you going, sir? I said, I'm going to America. I'm going to land in Chicago, going to United Airlines. I'm about half an hour from boarding. I'm ready to go. Sir, do you see that Starbucks down there? Yeah, man, it was a long way down. You should go to that Starbucks. And then when you get there, look to the right, and you'll see another Starbucks. You should go to that Starbucks, because right next to the Starbucks are the United Airlines ticket counters. Oh, man, that's a good idea. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I'll do that. By the way, where's this line go? Sir, this line goes to the ladies' toilet. So I'm going, I turn around and look, and they're all women. I hadn't thought about that, you know. I visited with a friend of mine one night. My wife and I were out for dinner, and he was really falling asleep. And I said, what's the problem? He said, I've got some jet lag. I said, what's that? You have to experience it. You can't even describe it. Okay. So what did you do? He said, I was over in Poland, and I helped a couple of boys, a couple of brothers, get a brewery started. They could brew the beer, and he said it's pretty good beer, but they didn't know how to market the beer. So he said, I helped them find a place where they could buy some bottles and where they could get some labels put together. And we found a place in town where they could sell the beer. It was pretty good stuff. And he said, we got them going, what's that all about? I'd like to do something like that. Well, here's the number to call. And it was an organization that contracts with USAID called NGOs, and there's a number of them. And next morning, I called that number. 30 days later, I landed in Chisinau, Moldova. My first overseas assignment. Chisinau, Moldova. You've been there, haven't you? It's a country. I'll tell you where it's at. Oh, excuse me. Right over here is the Black Sea. This is Europe. Then we have Eastern Europe, the Ural Mountains, and then we have Asia. And right below here is Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. Right above that are some Muslim countries. Anyway, Moldova is right by the Black Sea here. It's the poorest of the 14 former Soviet Union countries. I landed in Frankfurt, and my body was falling asleep. The clock on the wall said it's 6 o'clock. My body said, no, it's 11, and I haven't had any sleep. Can't stay awake. So I thought, well, I'll go get a cup of coffee. So I walked down to the coffee place, and the guy's making coffee, had some donuts, some other things, and I said, how much is coffee? He said, €3. Ooh. €3. No, I'm US dollars. No, he said, we can't exchange money here. You have to go to the money exchange. Okay, I hadn't thought of that either, you know. So I walk and walk and walk, and there's a money exchange. Open at 8 o'clock. So I'm out. Well, I landed in Chisinau, Moldova. And when you first thing that happens, you meet your interpreter. And they have a sign, surname is first, Quist, Everil. And he's smiling back there. Well, I went and talked to him. He seemed a little nervous. He was about 6'2", well-built, probably 35 years old, dressed well, seemed a little nervous. And as we got out to go to the car, he said, wait here. And he stood there, and I looked, and he was kind of looking around. Now we go. So we went to the SUV, and then I said something about, are you looking for somebody? No, he said, they follow me. Well, he was an activist for democracy. And he was doing things trying to get democracy going in Moldova. But you see, even though these countries were not they're former Soviets, they still have enough communists in their governments to make it really difficult to get things happening. And you all heard about the Orange Revolution in the Ukraine. Well, there's an example of how tough it was to get some democratic people in there. We left the airport, and I found Chisinau to be a very inviting city. This is the capital city of Moldova. Streets, the roads were wide. There were 2 boulevards through the city that were extremely wide. And as we go along, I'll learn different things. The reason they had 2 main boulevards that wide in all the major cities in the former Soviet Union, he told me that under communist times they had many army parades, and we had to have a wide street for that. And the sidewalks were like 12 to 15 feet wide because everybody was required to come and watch the parade. It was very interesting. Tree-lined streets, very beautiful, a clean city, a lot of parks. And kind of caught my eye why there would be that many parks. Well, see, under communist times, people didn't have cars to drive. There were no private-owned vehicles. So they couldn't get out of town, but they could take a bus to the park and have a family picnic. I saw a number of family picnics. And I saw a number of university students. What happened when they broke up the former Soviet Union, that happened on December 24th, 1991. These countries decided to get their people educated. So they opened a lot of universities. Most of the people that graduate from the universities are sitting on the sidewalk with the panhandling, or they're driving a taxi. There are no jobs at all, because there still is only one employer, like under communism, and that's the government. And each of these countries has their own government documented religion, language, and politics. And if you don't belong to all 3 of those and you can prove it, you can't get a job. So that's creating some problems. And what's happening is that most of these countries, there are 14 baby countries that are hanging around the belly of Russia. And each one of those countries is getting their energy and their gas and their petroleum from Russia because they don't have any. So Russia makes them pay. And if they don't do some things to make it easier for the Russian people who live there to get jobs, then they'll cut their power off. So a lot of times the power goes off, and it's not just because they're out of power. They haven't paid Russia enough yet. There were, along with parks, there was one major park. First of all, there were a lot of parliamentary buildings, government buildings, banks, embassies. And this one park was kind of interesting because it had a tank and like a Jeep from World War II sitting there. It had been cleaned up pretty good. But in front of it was an area about 12 feet in a circle. In the center, and I'm trying to find, I asked Andre, what is that? He said, oh, that's the perpetual flame. That's our eternal flame, he called it. But I said, there's no fire there. Well, we only run the eternal flame on Army Day. The other thing that was interesting, too, there weren't many stores in the cities, in many of the cities. Maybe some upscale clothing, maybe some jewelry, there were some banks. But when you buy something in these countries, you go to the market. The bigger cities have a central market. It's the size of a big park. And everything is laid out in there. Everything you want to buy. And went by a cemetery. And I said, I got to see this. We stopped. And there was no religious reference. Usually you'd see a statue of Jesus at least. There was none of that. But there were many statues of military people, of government people. It was a people-oriented society under communism. See, under communism, it was illegal to worship God. People were killed in their homes for that. It was illegal to hire anybody. It was illegal to run a business. You were just a pawn. The organizations that work, like there's 1,000 humanitarian organizations that are working in Haiti. I couldn't think there'd be 1,000, but I looked on the internet. One of them is called Mercy Corps. How many of you have heard of Mercy Corps? It's worldwide. They worked in one of the assignments I was on. And to help out the people in Haiti that have lost everything, some of the other people are taking them in and giving them a place to live, something to eat. Now, those people don't have much of anything either, but Mercy Corps has developed the T-Cash program, telephone cash. So you basically qualify, if you qualify, to have a telephone, then you'll get a telephone from Mercy Corps. And in that will be $40 a month, maybe more, maybe less. Then you can take that to a place that's, signed up to do this T-Cash program, and you can punch in the money that you bought, and it pays for it. It's beyond me to explain this kind of technology. But to give you an idea, Mercy Corps looks for donors, and it happened to be on this one. One of the donors was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They contributed $1.5 million to start with to get the telephones bought. So there are some people doing some real good around the country. You don't think much about that. I hadn't thought about that. What's the objective of the USAID? Well, to start with, back in the 50s, we were doing programs with 4 countries: Brazil, Turkey, Taiwan, and Korea. And from that, we are still doing over $1 million worth of business a year with each one of those countries. And when it comes time for a vote at the UN, or if there's a dispute worldwide, they're usually on our side. We build some political capital, and it makes a difference. Basically, what we're doing is the old saying, you give a person a fish, and they feed themselves for a day. But if you teach them how to fish, they'll learn how to feed themselves for a year or a lifetime. We create international business partners. We have a lot of NGO organizations, and ones I have to mention these. This is partly a U.S. aid presentation because we have been asked to tell the public what we do. So this is part of what that's about. Some of the NGOs I work with is VOCA, Volunteers for Overseas Cooperative Assistance, Windrock International, CNFA, Citizens Network for Foreign Affairs, IESC, International Executive Service Corps, and Heifer International, Mercy Corps. And what's interesting, when you go to the place to buy something, in most of those places, you need to figure out the rate of exchange. It might be $1 to 5 som. It might be dinar, might be peso, ruble, euro. So if they say it's $7, okay, and the rate of exchange was, boom, before you get that done, they got it figured out on here. The abacus or the abacus, how you pronounce it. And they can do that, and they got it. I learned how to do this one time, but the one time was a long time ago. And just for kicks, I bought one as a souvenir. And there's a little sticker on here. And guess what? Made in the People's Republic of China. Can you believe that? While I was in learning about Chisinau, I had a briefing. One of the first things we do the next day, we have a briefing in the office. The office has about usually 1 or 2 Americans in there that are on the program, and then we have good English-speaking people that are managers. And when you go there, they go over the itinerary that we're going to be doing with the village that I'm working with, and then they go over some things that not to do in the city. Like, there'll be a lot of people selling food out along the street. Don't buy any of that. And there are many other things. And I realized when I went in, our office was in a huge museum. Walked up the steps in this huge museum. And I got in there, and there was a military guy. There's a real military presence in those countries.